I know it's been a while since we've been able to meet, but I want to congratulate the staff for seeing us through this summer season, being able to open centers, being able to open the recreational facilities. With such a short staff, it's kind of amazing that we've gotten to this point. And we will be resuming regular meetings. I just want to make that clear. All righty, Diane, could you call the roll?
Yes. Commissioner Gibson,
Present.
Commissioner McEwen, Commissioner Crampton, Commissioner McCarthy,
Here.
Commissioner Panetta,
Here.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Here.
and Commissioner Spangler.
Here.
Okay, the floor is open for public comments, and Diane or Nate, who's going to handle that?
Yes, I'll take care of that, Madam Chair. Good evening, Commissioners. The City of Monterey is committed to the safe public attendance of its public meetings. Masks are required for all who attend in person, regardless of vaccination status, except for those who are younger than 2 years old or have a medical condition that prevents them from wearing a mask. We ask that attendees in the council chambers, please keep your phones and device speakers muted in order to prevent any audio interference or feedback during this hybrid meeting. As we carefully return to more normal activities, the City of Monterey seeks to continue to offer virtual methods for public participation options. Governor Newsom's executive order N-29-20 remains in effect, providing greater flexibility for agencies holding public meetings during the COVID-19 pandemic. If you are not joining us in person in the council chambers, there are two ways to virtually participate in the Parks and Recreation Commission meeting. One is by joining directly on Zoom Gov using the Zoom app on your computer or mobile device. And the second method is to join by calling into the meeting. To join a meeting on Zoom on your computer, smartphone, or telephone, use the link on the phone or the phone number on the agenda at isearchmonterey.org. Since the meeting has started, you'll find the agenda under the Recent tab. To join by telephone, please dial 1-833-568-8864. Then enter meeting ID 160-566-3903#. And if prompted to enter a participant ID, please press pound again. Detailed instructions on using Zoom are available at monterey.org/public meetings. To make a public comment using the Zoom app, you can virtually raise your hand using the Zoom app by pressing the raise your hand button at the bottom of your screen. If you dialed in by phone, raise your hand by dialing *9, and then to unmute yourself, dial *6. You must do both. Public commenters will be muted until it is their turn to speak. We will call on each public speaker in the order of their hands raised. Please stay within the allotted time that is established for today's meeting, which will be shown using a countdown timer on the screen. If you're connected live on Zoom, the timer is accurate with no delay. Today's meeting is also streamed on the city's YouTube channel, which is accessible at youtube.com/City of Monterey with approximately a 10-second delay. It's also on Comcast channel 25 with a approximate 90-second delay. As always, we look forward to receiving your public comments. Let's see if we have any comments on Zoom. We do not have anyone virtually that wants to make a comment. I'm not sure if there's anyone in the council chambers, however.
There isn't anyone here. So, Nate, has anyone called in? If not, I can close public comments.
We have no public comment.
Right, so public comments are now closed. The one item we have on our agenda for tonight is a report on an action item. Recommend the City Council commit 5% of Parks and Recreation fees for the purpose of parks and recreation facility maintenance and improvement, and revise the master plan schedule to be effective December 1st, 2021. Karen, could you present, please? Good evening, Parks and Recreation Commissioners. Thank you for joining us tonight for this special meeting.
How's this? Is this better?
Mhm, yeah.
Okay. I'll start over. Good evening, Parks and Recreation Commissioners. Thank you so much for joining us for this special meeting tonight. As you all know, the City of Monterey supports a robust parks and recreation system to make Monterey a better place to live, work, play, and visit. Residents and visitors of all ages and abilities are encouraged to enjoy a wide variety of high-quality parks and recreation facilities, programs, services, and opportunities provided by the City of Monterey. Tonight, we would like you to consider establishing a Parks and Recreation Facility Maintenance and Improvement Fund consisting of 5% of user fees that will provide a level of funding for much-needed facility improvements and repairs. While these funds will not cover the entire cost of maintenance needs, the allocation of dedicated fees will provide some level of stable funding for this purpose. Funding for city parks, facilities, programs, and services are supported by the general fund, which is a blend of taxpayer dollars, primarily consisting of transient occupancy tax, or the TOT, property tax, sales tax, participant fees and charges. And then please note this year, the fiscal year, please note that this fiscal year, to help address the negative impacts of COVID-19, the city received the allocation of about $6.5 million as a part of the American Rescue Plan.
Actually, I'm sorry, Karen, I think the earlier slides weren't being shared. Can I go over and switch?
Oh, so,
Just sharing the screen. We're having some, sorry to change up here. I just realized. Yeah. Give me 1 second because the screen share wasn't working the right way. So there we go. That should be clean.
Yeah.
Should be clearer. Is that
Yes.
clearer for everyone?
That's much better.
Yeah.
Super. Sorry. I realized it wasn't sharing initially.
okay. Well, the first slide was a little. Well, the first slide was probably a little boring anyway, so make sure you can see this slide. Can everyone see the pie chart?
Yep.
That's great.
Looks good.
So you're able to see, this is the pie chart that then depicts the blend of taxpayer fees, charges, transit occupancy tax, and property tax. And then this year, the city received $6.5 million from the American Rescue Plan. This is a one-time allocation that is actually helping us balance our budget this fiscal year. General fund revenue funding for parks and recreation facility maintenance has not kept up with the city's aging infrastructure, and dedicated funding for parks and recreation facility maintenance is needed to supplement the general fund and the traditional fee revenue. Our department is not alone. The city's infrastructure, including community centers, parks, and Monterey Sports Center, continue to age with limited funding for facility maintenance, renewal, and retrofitting. The average age of city facilities is 55 years old, and the cost to existing facilities and assets exceeds $100 million. The city's general fund, including parks and recreation user fees, largely fund programming and personnel for the city's programs with little funding for basic facility maintenance. While funding sources such as the Neighborhood and Community Improvement Program, or NCIP, have provided some valuable funding for facility improvements in prior years, these funding sources are intermittent. The annual maintenance expenses for the city's community centers, sports facilities, special programs, and campgrounds, as well as the Monterey Sports Center, total about $936,000 per year. Utility costs for the Parks and Recreation Department total about $900,000 per year. That is about $47,000 for community centers, $368,000 for the sports center, and $484,000 for parks. In addition to the Monterey Sports Center pays $545,000 a year in debt service. And we'll be paying that until May of 2032. Our combined maintenance expenses, debt service repayment, and utility costs for the department total about $2.38 million annually. These estimated totals do not include major renovations, equipment outlay, or capital improvement costs. For example, the pool slide at the Monterey Sports Center, artificial turf replacement at Solicitor Ballpark, and ongoing park and playground equipment replacement are not accounted for in these basic maintenance expenses category. Hope you guys can understand me okay through this mask. Is it okay?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. It's essential that we plan for facility repairs and maintenance, such as redesign and remodel for El Estero and Hilltop Park, and updates and renovations at Jackson Solicitor ballparks. I don't know if you can believe this, but in June, the Monterey Sports Center will be 30 years old. And in 2019, an evaluation of major maintenance and improvement costs for the Monterey Sports Center neared $5 million. The Monterey Sports Center needs the pools replastered, replaced coping, deck repairs, exterior paint, gym floor resurfacing, and much more. So where do we go from here with all these numbers and all these bills that we have to pay? What do we propose to help solve these problems? Well, the staff suggests that the city establish a Parks and Recreation Facility Maintenance and Improvement Fund. 5% of fees collected would be deposited into the fund, where the proceeds would be committed to maintain the type of facility where the activity takes place, such as the sports center, community centers, or ball fields. Initially, this department would like to raise the fees of programs and services by 5% to supply the new funding source without depleting the revenue for the projected fiscal year. The portion of the fees committed for Parks and Recreation facility maintenance and improvement was separately maintained and recorded, where the proceeds would be available to update and revitalize aging Parks and Recreation infrastructure. It should be noted, though, that the cemetery and the forestry fees will not be a part of this endeavor at this time. Okay, let's talk money. If the Parks and Recreation Department is able to return to our pre-pandemic program offerings and revenue based on the average of fiscal years 2016 and 2019, annual revenue predictions would total approximately $1 million in the Recreation Division and $4.5 million at the Sports Center for a total of $5.5 million. A commitment of 5% of these revenues would generate approximately $277,000 for facility maintenance and improvement. Currently, due to a reduction in programs, activities, services, and staffing levels, as well as attendance restrictions required by the pandemic, the revenue projections for the Parks and Recreation Department are generally lower than in past years. The annual revenue predictions for fiscal year 22 for the Recreation Division and the Sports Center are approximately $839,000 and $1.3 million respectively, for a total of $2.1 million. 5% of that total revenue would be approximately $107,000. Now, if we were to start this proposal halfway through the year, then the revenue for fiscal 22 would be about half that much. Okay, so this is where I try not to have a frowny face or a pouty voice or a poochy lip, and Matt knows this about me. Because if the revenue reaches pre-pandemic levels, which would be fantastic, $277,000 in estimated funding would barely scratch the surface and only cover about 11.6% of the $2.3 million in maintenance, debt service, and utility costs. But having said that, $277,000 is better than zero and will go a long way to supplement the funding for parks and recreation facilities, and any dedicated funding would help the city address maintenance needs in these facilities. The ability to provide services, as well as the success of programs and classes, depend on a safe, welcoming, and maintained facilities that attract more participants and remain competitive. As you may have guessed by the tone of this presentation, the Parks and Recreation Department requests that the PRC consider recommending to the City Council commit 5% of Parks and Recreation fees for the purpose of Parks and Recreation facility maintenance and improvement, and revise the master fee schedule to increase Parks and Recreation fees by 5%. The fees and the commitment of 5% of revenue would go into effect on December 1st, 2021, if approved by City Council. We're happy to take your questions and have a discussion.
So let's open it up to the commissioners to ask questions of staff. One question I had for Karen is, does that maintenance cost, I guess, assumption also factor in the fact that things like water usage, sewage usage is going up? Have you already sort of configured what you think that cost will be?
I don't think we didn't figure in increases in that point.
Okay,
No, but you're absolutely right. That is something we should consider.
right. Commissioners, I can't see you very well, so you may have to raise your hand or unmute yourself if you want to ask a question.
Should I stop sharing here? Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
There you go.
Dennis, I didn't hear your question.
I just said, yeah, if you stop sharing, then you can see our faces.
Okay.
So that's what
I can't see it on the screen. I'm getting a mirror.
I haven't started any questions yet.
I have a comment.
Is that Kathy? Go ahead.
Yeah, did I hear that the 5% from the fees of a specific facility would be in a dedicated fund for that facility?
Yes, ma'am. That's what
So
we're proposing. That's what we're proposing.
So they can't be in a general pool where they just take money for whatever's needed for anything.
Absolutely. That's the whole purpose of the fund.
And to
Okay.
clarify, it would be that the type of facility. So we've checked in with the finance team, and because of the types of programs may be, for example, held in different types of ballparks, it would go into a ballpark category, for example, the 5% of fees, to then support deferred maintenance and maintenance needs for any of either Jack's or Ferranti or any of the ballparks that we have. It's too logistically challenging for finance to have it go to the specific, each ballpark have its own separate account. So it's each type of facility. It'll stay in Parks and Recreation is the most important part.
And we're hoping that possibly it may be able to go down as far as the community center level because they're broken out in the budget that way. But like Nat said, for an actual ballparks, we don't have accounts set up for each ballpark. So it would go, if there are ball field fees, those ball field fees would go to support ball fields in general,
Right.
if that makes sense.
That would be an accounting nightmare otherwise.
Just a follow-on question, I think that's related, and just to state it a different way, if I'm understanding this correctly, then is those monies, the 5% and the funds they would go into, those could not be tapped for use by the general fund?
That's my understanding, is that they would not be used for just general fund. That's the purpose of setting up a separate fee so that we know that we can dedicate it to facility maintenance and improvements.
Okay.
And if I could also add to that, we'll likely need, of course, since it's only 11 point whatever percent, 8% of expected costs for maintenance and utilities, the general fund will need to supplement. This is not to replace the general fund's contribution towards maintenance. That will need to continue. But this is dedicated strictly for maintenance.
Got it.
Another question?
Mhm.
So the 5% was calculated for some reason and somehow. How did that percent come about instead of 3% or 12%, 6%?
I worked with the numbers, and when I was doing it as low as like 1 or 2%, because I was hoping to keep it as low as possible, it wasn't generating enough revenue, I felt, to make the impact that we would need. However, if I went as high as 8 or 10%, I felt like it made the fees cost prohibitive for our participants.
Mm.
So
Okay.
that's how I came to that amount.
And it was
Okay.
based off of this last year's expenses or the year prior? I missed that part.
I'm sorry. So we had based it I think we can, well, I don't want to go back and show those slide again, but we had actually took actual numbers from fiscal year 16, 17,
16,
and
17.
16 through 19.
Right.
And then, so we actually used those actual numbers. And then we were for doing our predictions for what we've projected for this fiscal year. So we did it 2 different ways.
And you said it would start on December 20, December?
First.
So we're hoping it would start by December 1st. And
And then
so for this fiscal year, for the 5% of this year's projected revenue would be about, I think it was $107,000. If we don't start till December, most likely the account would only be funded about half that much.
and through the next fiscal year, and then we come back to this at that time to decide if we need to increase, decrease, or any change would happen?
I'm sure if we needed to revisit it, if it was the pleasure of the commission and the council, that would be something we would need to explore for sure. My guess is that we're not going to be able to rebound to pre-pandemic levels right away. I think it's going to take us some time to build back, depending on how long the pandemic endures.
If you look at what the current inflation rate is right now, 5% just barely covers the rate of inflation. So I think 5% is a minimum, even though it may be somewhat painful. I was looking to see what kind of a breakdown you had on where the fees are coming from outside of the sports center, and how many of those fees would be paid from non-residents. Can you give me a feel for that?
Sure, we could research that for you. Program fees are not on the master fee schedule. So all of our things, for example, swimming lessons or basketball leagues or volleyball leagues or
It's all
preschool and those types of things, those are fees that are set by our department. And we base that on market rate and competition and the cost recovery for us to offer the program. So those fees and charges fluctuate quite a bit. And for those hundreds of programs, 5% of those fees would still go. So all of those program fees, 5% of those would also be included in this fund.
But for people that are coming in from outside to say have a wedding and want a location, and that's just one example because I was looking at the line items, that's not going to generate a great deal of income for the facilities and to help out on the fund there. So I would be curious as to where the majority of the funds would be coming from with a 5% fee increase.
So if I could just jump in, yes, wedding permits and those type of things wouldn't generate a lot of revenue, but we do, I think, probably have about 50% non-residents participating in most of our programs and being members of the Sports Center. And that 50% really does help us be able to offer services to Monterey residents, because sometimes non-residents are what pushes us over the class minimum and allows us to offer a program. And that difference between a resident and non-resident actually really is a nice help for us when we run our programs. It was based on the Sports Center hopefully generating 1.3 million in revenue this year, and Recreation Division 839,000 in revenue. And that's, that is if we are able to meet our budget numbers this year. So that's where we get the 107,000 for this current fiscal year.
And Sid, to answer your question, I know at the Sports Center, our programs, the revenue for the programs help cover the program costs, but when our volume is up at the Sports Center for memberships, that's our bread and butter at the Sports Center. So that's always helpful to us if we can get the volume back up. So if we can get through the pandemic, I think that would be greatly helpful.
Yeah. So Lacey, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I'm wondering about the value of possibly increasing the fees by 6% or 7%, but leaving the dedicated portion to maintenance costs at that 5% suggestion, just because in the past, if I remember correctly, we've talked about not wanting to increase fees too regularly. So I'm thinking about what other commissioners have said about certain costs with water and sewer and inflation, and wondering if we might need to increase that fee just a little bit more to help us cover some of those costs so that we're not constantly having to increase fees.
It's definitely something to consider. We'd have to probably look at how that might affect things, if it might have priced us out of the market for things like swimming lessons or preschool and those types of things. We probably would stay pretty competitive still with the sports center membership rates. And Andre could probably speak to that in more detail if you'd like to know more about that. But I understand and appreciate that we wouldn't want to raise the fees consistently too often, because if we raise the fees, say 5% right now for this facility fee, but then want to raise it then again in order to cover costs or other things, other programming that we're trying to do, then it does seem to, the guests may think, oh, they're raising the prices again. But I don't know, we'd have to discuss it as a team probably, and as you as our commission and with the council. How would the public feel? Would they rather have just one big increase and then be done for a while, or would they rather it be gradual?
And we did used to raise our fees kind of on an annual basis. It was an alternating schedule, and up until 2014 we did that. And then there was about 5 years where we didn't raise our fees, and then in 2019 we did a 10% increase. And we really didn't get to see much of 2019's fee increases due to COVID-19 hitting, in March. So right now we're just kind of in the rebuilding process, and we're trying to get participants back. So it's also that fine line of like not pricing ourselves out of the market and trying to get people back. But ideally we would, we'd be looking at fees more consistently than we have been.
Dennis, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just recalling, this has been a long-standing issue that we've been discussing. I know we even had at one point a couple of commissioners that were dedicated to looking at this, in this subject area. My question really is, I can guess and speculate, but what brought this to a head that this has been raised now to do it now?
I know it has been a priority for quite some time, especially the last 2 years. But then unfortunately, when the pandemic hit, our focus had to change to pandemic response, economic crisis, closing facilities and reopening facilities. And we're really facing the fiscal reality about our maintenance costs and our ability to maintain our facilities. And so we really needed to get this moving if we want to get it started this year.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
So are there other comments from commissioners, other questions and comments?
Well, I'll state the obvious. Essentially what we're doing is asking our guests to pay 5% into a fund to help maintain the buildings and fields, et cetera. That's essentially what it is.
Yes, sir.
Okay. It's no mystery, but if somebody asks me, I want to be able to tell them directly what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Absolutely.
Yep, and then in perpetuity, moving forward, and let's say next year we come back with another consideration for a fee increase, then it would be 5% of the total fee. of
Right,
course.
right. So as the fees increase over years, it would still remain 5% of those revenues would go into the
Into this fund?
reinvestment
Yeah.
fund. Yes.
Got it.
Any other questions? If not, I'll
Did I
take a-
answer all of Sid's questions? I want to make sure I had answered her questions. Okay.
Sid?
Thank you, Sid.
Okay. All righty, let's open it up for public comments. Is there anyone out there in the public who wishes to comment?
Madam Chair, there is no public comment.
Okay, so public
Thank you.
comments are now closed. I'd like to return now to the commission for any questions, discussion, and final comments. I guess I'd say, I think the 5% is modest. But given the circumstances, I think the staff has tried to come up with a proposal that doesn't shock the public when we're all dealing, when we really don't know what's going to happen. We hope for the best. All right, any other comments?
I just had a comment. I'm just very, very surprised that there's no public comment on this issue when fees are going to be raised at 5%. And again, I don't clearly, I'm assuming, and because you guys do your job, this has been noticed appropriately and just nobody has shown up. And I know it's a special meeting, but again, this is not really a question. It's just a comment. I'm very surprised that nobody's there talking about, for example, sports center fees being raised 5%. We've always had folks show up for that. So again, I just raised that because if we move forward on this, which, again, may make sense to the majority of us, we'll see. But I'm just concerned we're going to get some, what's the word, bite back later. And we just need to be prepared for it. So again, comment, not a question.
And then the next step, this is a recommendation to the city council. And so we anticipate the second meeting in September is when this will go before council, and our friends there may experience public comment on the item on September 21st.
Yeah, there's another shot.
Right, another shot. Any other comments? Well, this does require a vote. And so I guess I'd like to ask Commissioner if someone would like to make a motion on this proposal.
I'll make a motion. I move that we amend Resolution 19-114 and Resolution 20-031 to commit 5% of parks and recreation fees for the purpose of facility maintenance and improvement, and revise the master fee schedule to increase parks and recreation fees by 5%.
The only thing I demand, just because they would like us not to mention these resolution numbers.
Oh, okay.
So, Lacey, so it would just be recommended City Council commit 5% of funds. Is
Okay.
that your intention? Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, I have a comment about the motion.
Yes.
There's nothing in there about the 5% being dedicated to the facility or where it came from. Will that be in our charter? Will it be stated that way?
That, I believe that is in the resolution.
Yes.
We
Okay.
just don't want you to cite the specific resolution numbers because there's some question as to which is the correct reso. So if you could just approve the 5% fee increase and the facility improvement fund.
Right. That's what the motion is
Mm-hmm.
for us. I would need a second.
Second.
Okay, Sid seconds. And all those in favor, raise your hands. Got everybody? And
Mhm.
you see everybody?
Diane can't see Dennis yet.
Dennis, we don't see you.
Hold on, I'm here, but just hold on. There we go.
Oh, no, his hand's down. His hand was a minute ago.
Yeah, but my yellow hand is up.
I see that hand. Yes, you're right.
Is there anyone opposed? I think that was unanimous of the commissioners that were here. Okay, the resolution is passed and we'll be sending it on to City Council for their purview. The next regular meeting, and it might be hybrid, it might be Zoom, just stay tuned, will be Wednesday, September 8th at 5:30.
Thank you, everyone, for your
Okay.
flexibility today and for taking the time to hear this for us.
And let's hear it for the staff. They've made it through the summer and kids
Well
play,
done.
sports centers open. I mean, I'm happy.
Well, I have a question about the sports center.
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
I see that sports center masks are required for everyone again. Is that in all the public places or just the sports center?
All city facilities right now. We're the last ones. We're the last holdouts because it is more challenging for people when they're working out, but due to increased infection levels and the intensity of the Delta variant and several other factors, we had to move that direction.
And that's
Indoor.
the city.
I'm
It's
sorry?
the city a mandate.
Sorry, I can't hear.
Is it a
It's just-
mandate?
It's just for the city. It's a mandate for the city,
For our city facilities, yes.
the city facilities. Okay. Good.
Is that indoor only or both indoor and outdoor?
It's indoor only, and we will be moving our high-intensity group exercise classes back out onto the sun deck again. Because some of those classes it's just too challenging to do with a mask on. So I think there are 10 classes that will be outside starting on Monday.
Okay, thank you.
Those are excellent questions. Thank you.
Any other comments? I think we don't have comments from the commissioner on my schedule, but would you like to hear some?
We'll have another chance on September 8th too.
Yeah, well, hopefully we'll have some kind of meeting on September 8th. If not, I will declare this meeting adjourned.
Thank you.